Hey everybody, and welcome back to Lindsey's Little Library. So I'm here today with my June wrap up. I am shocked by how much I read in June. June was an insane month for this household. There's a lot of car time, which probably is what helped me read as much. I did a lot of reading in parking lots waiting for children. I'm sure I'm not alone. But let's see, I read 8 books in June. And officially, as of the last day of June, I read 50 books for the year. So I have this crazy lofty goal of reading 100 books in a year. I've never been able to accomplish that. I've come somewhat close. So I'm hoping to get to that. And so far we're on track as long as we kind of keep going the way we're going. So anyways, first book I finished in June is I Shot by Taylor Adams. So this follows James and Ellie, and they are relocating. They're moving, kind of cross-country-ish, I think. And they have to kind of make their way through a pretty desolate area. Their marriage is a bit rocky at the moment. So being stuck in the car together for so long is a little bit trying. And so they're going through this very small town. They pull over at this very shady gas station, and Ellie realizes there's this man that's like staring at them, and it just gives her the ick and the but she kind of blows it off. They keep going on their journey, come across a couple other like not so normal things, but yet nothing like alarming. And final thing is they come to this road close sign, and there's this detour that's going off into this kind of like back road, like Bob's Road, like not country-ish, but like deserted in the middle of a desert, gravelish road. But you know what? It's a detour. They're told to do that, so they follow it. And they find themselves stranded in the middle of absolutely nowhere, and quickly realize that they're being hunted by a sniper. And they find themselves this road, and where it took them into this like valley. So they're like down in this bowl, and this sniper is above them. And they're stranded there. Their car has broken down. It's just them. It is in true Taylor Adams fashion, wild ride. So 4 stars, loved it. Let's see, next ones are over here. So I also read Dust Child. There's the author. Not going to try that. This has opened up my world of historical fiction into anything that centers around the Vietnam War, because I think I'm moving on. Very, very interesting and crazily insightful story, if those are words. So we're in 1969. We have sisters who are desperate to help pay their parents' debt off and leave their rural village. So they leave there and they work at a bar in Saigon. And this is during the Vietnam War. The Viet Cong are just as crazy as the Americans, and they're just kind of stuck in the middle of this stuff. So they get to this bar, and they are thrown headfirst into this world that they were not prepared for, not expecting. They learn how to speak English very quickly, how to dress seductively, how to drink and flirt with these American GIs in return for money, because they are that desperate for help. And as the war moves closer to the city, the once innocent Trang gets swept up in an irresistible romance with a very handsome and kind American helicopter pilot that she meets. His name's Dan. I lied. I'm going ahead. So she meets a helicopter pilot, falls in love. Decades later, an American veteran, Dan, returns to Vietnam with his wife, Linda, in search for ways to heal from his PTSD. Instead, secrets he thought he had buried are surfaced and threaten his marriage, threaten his mental health. It's tough. And at the same time, we have Phuong, I think I said that right, an adult son of a Black American soldier and a Vietnamese woman, and he is on a mission to find his parents. So 3 very intriguing stories. Like, there's just so much packed into this book. It is a hard read, but such a good read. It is an eye-opener. I went down a rabbit hole. It was fantastic. I give this 4 stars. I highly, highly recommend to anybody who loves historical fiction. We have multiple timelines, multiple perspectives, based on true events. So much packed into this little tiny book, and it was fantastic. What did I do next? Oh, I read Wild at Heart by K.A. Tucker, because after this very, very heavy book, I needed something a little lighter. So this is the second book. It follows the Simple Wild, right? Why is it not on here? I'm pretty sure. So this follows our main character, Kala, and the first book, Kala ends up going to Alaska and reconnecting with her father, and reestablishing that relationship, and you just can't help but fall in love with Kala. You can't help but fall in love with Alaska, and so this is the continuation of the story. I can't really tell you much of what it's about because it would totally spoil the first book, but I really enjoyed it. They're a little slower, in my opinion, to kind of get through, but still like solid. I would say like 3.75 stars for this one, and definitely makes me want to pick up the last one. And then there's a little novella. It just makes me want to go to Alaska so bad. I love it. All right, next one, I listened to the book Hello Stranger by Catherine Center, which I don't know, either it just came out or it's about to come out. So I listened to that one on NetGalley. So this follows Sadie, and Sadie ends up in a really interesting situation where she has to have emergency brain surgery, and she wakes up and she has a condition called face blindness. So her brain does not compute faces. Like, it doesn't even put them together to look like a face. Like, she says it's almost like Picasso. It's all over the place. She remembers people, so like she can figure out who she's talking to based upon what they say or what they sound like or memories she has, but she cannot recognize them with their face. So, and add on top of that is she's an artist. She's a portrait artist, and she's competing in this really huge competition where she has to paint this portrait and she can't see a face. So it just follows that dilemma that she faces, and like how she handles what happens to her, how she continues to thrive and survive with what's happening to her. And there's a really cute love story part of it. I, again, really enjoyed it. Highly recommend. I'm loving Catherine Center books. Definitely a 4-star for me. Then the next one I read on my Kindle, because I'm trying to clear through some of my Kindle books this year. It's called Remember This by Shay Buggs. This follows Lucy and Mason, and I did not plan this, but Lucy and Mason have a very interesting relationship. We start out in the book where they're on the brinks of divorce. They're not getting along. There ends up being an accident where Mason has a bit of short-term amnesia and does not really remember what's going on. So we're dealing with face blindness and amnesia at the same time. It was a really interesting time when I was reading these two. And in order to try to help Mason get his memory back, they were told to kind of recreate their wedding, kind of go back to like when they started dating each other, because that's the timeline that he does remember. And try, in the meantime, trying to kind of rekindle old flames. It was a 2-star read for me. It really was not fantastic. I'm going to stop talking about it because it was not great, but it's another book off my Kindle and it counts. So we're going to go with it. Then I read The Marriage by K.L. Slaughter. This Melinda asked me to do a spoiler-y-ish vlog on this, which I did. If you want to check it out, it's on my channel. Really awesome premise. Basically, like 10 years ago, he killed my son. Today, I marry him. Really interested. Definitely sounds like a Lindsey book. It was only 3 stars. It was, go watch my video. Again, I'm not going to waste time talking about this book anymore. It got weird. I didn't like it. So anyways, on to happier topics, maybe not so happy, but yet a better book. 4 Treasures of the Sky by Jenny, there's her last name. This one gave 4 stars to. This one is set in China, and we are, what is our timeline? I don't know if it really even says, does it tell me? No. I don't have a timeline. So it's set against the backdrop of the Chinese Exclusion Act about a Chinese girl fighting to claim her place in the 1880s American West. So what happens to this poor sweet girl, Dayu is how I would pronounce her name. She is in a situation where she finds herself basically an orphan at a pretty young age. So she is sent kind of to the city, and she has to start finding her way. And this girl, as much as she is trying to make the right decisions for her, she tends to end up with like the worst luck in the world. So she ends up basically being kidnapped and shipped over to America in the most brutal, insane way you can think of having to be on a boat for weeks. Ends up in San Francisco, is basically betrothed to this brothel house. Ends up being able to flee that situation, but finds herself in an even worse situation in Idaho. It's just heartbreaking. What I'm loving about this book and what Jenny did is that her father, I think, saw a sign, like a historical marker, someplace in Idaho that mentioned a Chinese hanging that was there. It described the story of how 5 Chinese men were hanged by vigilantes for the alleged murder of a local white store owner. And her father basically said, you should write a story about this. And this is the product of that. And it is beautiful and heartbreaking. And I can't help but love Dayu. So good. I did have to, as much as I'm raving about it, there were a little bit of this book that I just had a bit of a hard time with. And can I explain it without giving it away? When she finds herself in these really stressful and horrible situations, she's almost presented with, either consciously or unconsciously, I couldn't really tell if this was like a figure she saw or if it was just in her head, but basically this like figure of this girl that she knows of whose name is also Dayu, who is the character in a story that she was told by her parents. And so this girl comes in these very stressful times, and they have these conversations, and I get a little confused at that part. So maybe I missed it. It could be, but overall, fantastic book. And then the last book I picked up was one I grabbed from the library, which I just can't believe I read something I grabbed from the library. I grabbed this during one of our book list Thursdays where we did the Roll Your Next Read at the library. And so this ended up being one of my rolls and one I picked up. And I read the first chapter because I did a little try chapter with that, and like right away I'm like, I gotta read this book. Because the first little page is from the perspective of a letter, which is just fantastic. But anyways, and then as people were watching my video, highly recommended this. A friend of mine, Kim, said you have to read this book, so I did. So it's Looking for Jane by Heather Marshall. So this takes place in Canada. We have 3 timelines here. We have 2017 is kind of your present day, 1971, and 1980. We have a couple of different characters that we're hearing from within this book. So multiple timeline, multiple perspective, historical fiction, checks all of the Lindsey boxes, right? So we have Angela, who discovers this missing letter and is on this like quest to figure out where is the intended recipient, because the information in this letter has to get to that person. We have 1971, we have we have Dr. Evelyn Taylor, and as a teenager, she was sent to a home for fallen women where she was forced to give up her baby for adoption, which is a trauma that she's never really recovered from. And despite harrowing police raids and the constant threat of arrest, she has joined the Jane Network, which is an abortion-supported network to help women get the help that they need. And so this Dr. Evelyn Taylor is an abortion provider. She is just determined to give women the choice that she never had. Then we have 1980, and we follow Nancy. She has discovered that she was adopted, and her parents never told her this. She found out on her own. She starts questioning everything she's ever known. And when she becomes pregnant, she feels like she has no one to turn to for help. So she decides to reach out to the Jane Network for help. So you have these 3 stories, this backdrop of this crazy thing that happened in the 60s of this Catholic place run by nuns that basically was like a baby factory. So you have that. You have the trauma that's happened to Dr. Evelyn Taylor from that. You have Nancy dealing with figuring out that she was a child of parents that didn't want her, and she was adopted, and she has parents who won't tell her that. She found it on her own, and Then you have this letter. There's so much packed into this book. And so it really kind of centers around the Jane Network, which was an underground network that provided choices for women when it was illegal to make those choices. But the overall kind of huge theme of this book is really motherhood, and what does motherhood look like when you want to be a mother versus when you don't want to be a mother, when you're prepared to be a mother versus when you're not prepared to be a mother, when you want to be a mother but you can't be a mother. There's so much motherhood themes in this that highly recommend to anybody and everybody. I love the representation of pro-choice versus pro-life in this book. I thought that was done really well, and you see very clearly both sides of it. It's such a great historical fiction. I feel like this is not talked about enough. I had not heard of it. I mean, not that I'm the be-all end-all of books, but I kind of am a little obsessed with books, and I didn't hear about this book, so I'm like, I'm here to tell the world, go read this book. It's fantastic. So those were the books I read in June. Pretty solid month, I would say, except for those two not so great ones. But we're just going to forget about those. So what do I have up next? I have a couple of book club books I need to work on. One of them being Someone Else's Shoes by Jojo Moyes. I'm struggling a little bit. I don't know if it's because we're in the midst of 4th of July weekend right now. So if it's just craziness that is happening. I'm over 100 pages in. I'm interested, definitely. So we have a couple of characters that we're following in here. We have Nisha and Sam leading two very different lives, and they end up switching bags at the gym at one point, which kind of ends up affecting their lives quite dramatically. So it's good so far, but this is for book club. And then I did just finish an audiobook, which we'll see in my next wrap up. So I needed to get another audiobook, and I was like looking for something really dynamic and to catch my attention because it's just so stinking hot in Wisconsin right now, and we have like no rain and it's humid. So for me to go on a walk with the dog needs some extra motivation, hence a really good audiobook. So I'm listening to Devolution by Max Brooks. This is so fantastic. I literally just started this yesterday. I'm already like a quarter of the way through. I was going to try to find where I was in here. I think I'm on journal entry 4 is where I'm at. Yeah. So it's not very big, but the way this is produced as an audiobook, it's like I'm listening to like a true crime podcast or something. I don't know. It's like a news broadcast. So this follows the story of a place called Green Loop. It is pretty secluded, set near Mount Rainier. And Mount Rainier goes, it's a volcano, it explodes. And so Green Loop is kind of sequestered off from civilization, and they face a bit of an issue with some Sasquatches. I haven't gotten there yet. Right now we're just kind of faced with like, oh my gosh, we're cut off from society, and now what are we gonna do? So it's so good so far. I'm sure I will finish it fairly quickly, but I'm excited about that one. And then I have a few books that I have checked out from the library that I'm pretty interested in. I would love to be able to get to Fifth Avenue Glamour Girl by Renee Rosen. 1938 young woman is selling face cream out of a New York City beauty parlor and is determined to prove that she can have it all. Her name is Estee Lauder, and she's about to take the world by storm. So it caught my eye. I'm interested. I wouldn't mind picking that up. What else did I grab from the library? Got a couple others here. Oh yeah, I grabbed this one from the library as well. The Little Wartime Library by Kate Thompson. This library is housed, I believe, in like a subway station during the Blitz. This one seemed interesting. We Have Never Rescue a Rogue by Virginia Heath. Diana and Giles only tolerate each other for the sake of their nearest and dearest. Everyone believes the two of them are meant to be together, but they know that they don't need to be together. I'm sure it's a hate to love. Kind of interested in that one. I picked up The Lost Ticket by Freya Sampson, totally based on the cover. See, strangers on a London bus unite to help an elderly man find his missed love connection in this heart-wrenching new novel. So that sounded cute. And then I grabbed this. Don't know if I'm going to get to it. Again, doing a little haul here for you. The Twyford Code by Janice Hallett. I read The Appeal by Janice Hallett and really, really loved it because I thought it was put together in a really unique way. And it sounds like this one as well is kind of a bunch of audio files, and it's time to solve the crime of the century. So we'll see if we get to any of these. But these are also kind of sitting next to me on my list, along with 4,000 other books that I have. So that is kind of what's coming up next. We'll see what happens. July should be a pretty fun month of reading. Hopefully have a little more time for it. Anyways, if you've read any of these books and you want to chat about them below, let me know. I love all the comments. Otherwise, like, comment, subscribe, and all that fun stuff. And I'll see you next time. Bye.